Leaders in the Arena. This is a webinar and podcast series sponsored by Bridge Innovate to share exciting and inspirational stories across a range of leadership topics, from strategy to board development to experiencing innovation and leading change. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenny Whitener, and I'm the CEO and founder of Bridge Innovate. We empower teams to lead, think, and problem solve differently. And part of that is sharing stories of leaders in the arena who have tackled problems, mobilized change, and achieved great things for our community. Today, we're so excited to have with us Rachel Gammon, a Bridge Consultant and part of our leadership team here at Bridge Innovate, leading our nonprofit consulting practice. Rachel has tremendous background in nonprofit leadership, having led the Northside Neighborhood House through tremendous growth. I know she'll talk to you a little bit about that today. Also an award-winning both nonprofit here in the Chattanooga region, as well as executive director, having won many awards for her leadership with that organization. If truth be known, I think she actually is an educator way back there at the beginning. But Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself as we get to share with participants today a bit about you before we go into today's program, Maximizing Board Retreats, Strategies for Engagement and Impact. Tell the team that's joined us today a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Rachel Gammon. I had the honor and a privilege to lead the organization, the Northside Neighborhood House, for 18 years. I started working there as a junior in college at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga with their children's program. Became program director directly out of school, and really spent my entire adult life basically at the Northside Neighborhood House. My family has recently relocated to Spencer, Tennessee. Everyone always looks at me with a blank stare when I say that. So we were up in the Fall Creek Falls area, and that move allowed me to make a career shift. And so had the great privilege of just being approached by Jenny to join her team. I'd always said that if I worked anywhere other than the Northside Neighborhood House, I would love for it to be Bridge Innovate. We went through 3 strategic planning processes with Bridge Innovate and really just attribute some of our growth to having a clear vision, a bold vision, and one that the board could help the staff execute. And so those visions and different strategic plans allowed us to grow from 2 sites in North Chattanooga to now having 15, 3 thrift stores and 2 delivery sites. And then we have 10 full-time people in Hamilton County schools through our community schools work at the Northside Neighborhood House. Went from a $300,000 budget to over $4 million during that time. So just was really blessed to lead through some incredible growth and change. And so much of that was due to just A, having a great strategy, B, aligning that strategy to our team. And when I talk about our team, I'm talking both about our board members who lead, guide, and direct us, as well as our leadership team and all of the folks who are doing the just delivery of services day to day. So happy to be with you all today and just talk about some different things about engaging our boards.
Right. And I just am so thankful for you joining us. I know that as we get started today, I just want to continue to invite our participants who are joining us that please use the chat and introduce yourselves, get to know each other who are joining in today to learn more about maximizing board retreats and for impact. And also, if you have questions along the way, please post those in the chat. I'll be monitoring them. And if we have time, we'll be engaging Rachel along the way with that. So today, Rachel, we're talking about board retreats. So this is either your greatest blessing or your greatest nightmare, I think. So talk to us a little bit about, from your perspective, what makes a board retreat truly effective?
Sure. So I've had some conversations recently about this just as I've shifted into this role. And one of the things that I always encourage, both with board retreats and really staff planning sessions, is that you use an outside facilitator or consultant to lead those. And the reason I think that's very important is because any type of retreat is really designed to provide connection and direction. And if you are trying to do all of the leading it's very hard for you to participate and to speak into the process. And so I really, whether it's, yes, using a consultant, using someone who has experience with your nonprofit that can just come in and lead through a session, I think there's tremendous value in that. The second thing that I think really makes time in a board retreat effective is having a clear and very defined plan. On the front end, you need to look at what are you trying to achieve? What's your major overarching goal? And then what are the deliverables that you want to be sure that you walk away with? Those two aspects of planning a board retreat are so important because then it will help you to look at and think about how do we achieve those goals and just get to those deliverables. The last thing that I think is really important is just being sure that your activities are engaging all of your participants. So I think you need to, again, have that plan, know what your deliverables are, and then really put some time and thought into how does your group typically interact? Are there ways to kind of push them outside of their comfort zone? What are some strategies you can use to be sure that everyone's engaged? And I often said, as I'm leading some of these now and have participated in the past, this is really when my teacher mode steps in. And I'm just really thinking, okay, are people engaged? Knowing your audience and being sure that if people aren't engaged, that you're working also as a staff person in the room to be sure that you're pulling people in and getting them actively engaged in the activities.
Right. I really love how you talked about the fact that be clear about your goals, make sure those plans, your plan for the retreat mobilizes and helps you achieve those goals and deliverables. But one of the things
Can
I,
I add one more thing? Oh,
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
setting time, it's setting times too. And I know we do that and are really try to stay to times because often if you have a retreat and then that's a time that some socialization comes into play, you can get off track and not meet all of those deliverables and all of those, and you'll walk away and you've just not accomplished everything you wanted to if you don't have some real clear times set aside to achieve all those goals. Sorry.
Well said. And, one of the things is just knowing your work and the work that we've done together, that I know that when you're helping coach an executive director or a president define those goals for that board retreat, that you're looking at it both from what I would call the business side. What do we have to get done on behalf of the entity, on behalf of the organization? And on that emotional front, the relationship side, building commitment, sort of that soft component as well. And I know that you actually help teams go through that. So talk a little bit more about this alignment of the board strategy and mission. So you're at the retreat, you've defined these goals, you know who's there, you've got a time box, you've got your activities, but now how do you ensure that the board strategy and the mission come into play?
Sure. Well, I think first you have to start, and some of this, depending on what you're again trying to accomplish, might need to happen prior to a retreat, right? You need to be sure that there's a really clear understanding of the work, whether that's a deep dive into program and service delivery, whether that's a deep dive into past strategy and what you've accomplished, whether that's a SWOT analysis, and some of those can be built into your time together depending on how much time you have set aside for your retreat. But I think that's really important because to see where we're going moving forward, we have to look at where we have been and where we are currently, right? So I think that just clear understanding of the mission and the work is so important to start. And then I think it's important to bring into any strategy session that you're doing some type of thought around external trends that are going on, whether in the field that you're working in or even, especially in our nonprofit sector right now, there's a lot going on just with funding. So really thinking about and being sure that your participants are knowledgeable around that, or you have a way to share and immerse them in that process. And then I think we have to encourage our board is responsible for setting our vision and helping us to be strategic and executing on that mission and vision that we have. And so I think that there has to be some bold, attainable goals that are set, and that has to be built in. And then I think the last aspect is being sure that you've got time during that board retreat to set clear action items for each of the participants and to clearly define where the board's responsibility and execution of that strategy to align with the mission, where that lies. And I think sometimes that's something that we miss. We set this out and then the board doesn't see where their place in it is. And so if we're setting some initiatives and goals for the next year at a retreat, we really need to be sure that we're giving the board members that are present in that room time to reflect on what are the action items that they need to take away and that they need to be sure that they execute in order for the board for the nonprofit to achieve its mission.
Thanks for walking us through that. When I hear you talk through that, and you talked about the importance of stretching their thinking, actually. You were talking about bringing in some external perspective, really challenging them on some stretch goals or understanding the relationship of the vision and the strategy to where they are. It makes me think about, we do a lot of work at Bridge looking at business literature and the upcoming things. And Adam Grant and his book, Think Again, that we've been doing a lot of work with, he's a professor at Wharton. He challenges us to get out of what he calls the ostrich effect, where we have our head down in the sand and think that the world around us is not changing. And I know every board knows the world is changing, especially right now. But I think your invitation at this board retreat design to be more open, to open the aperture, to open the perspective, look at these external trends and look at the relationship of your goals and where you're headed with strategy is a really great thing for these boards to do.
Yesterday, we were working with a nonprofit and we talked about that. In the nonprofit space, we can be doing things really well and with a heart to serve our community, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that the needs of the folks that we serve are constantly changing. And so to your point, Jenny, if we have that head in the ground, we're just going to keep doing the work we've been doing, which is really great work, but we don't have any flexibility to pivot and adjust based on needs that we see, we can really miss the opportunity to elevate our work to a new level.
Good. All right. So far we've covered the importance of when you're having your board retreat, talking about having, clear goals, a plan, deliverables, engaging activities. You talked about the alignment of strategy and mission to your board retreat plan. Talk to us a bit more about some of your advice on getting people really engaged. Like, what are the best ways to get people active, contributing, and engaged in the retreat?
Sure. Well, first is a no-brainer, but I think sometimes we take this for granted. But you really need to get on people's calendar a month to 2 months in advance and set aside and be very direct in the importance and the value of this retreat. That's why having a conversation and knowing going into it, this is what our goal is, this is what our deliverables are going to be. Our board members are busy. They're often balancing careers, personal lives, self-care, all of these things, and they're invested in our mission because they love our mission, right? But they are busy. And so if you say, set aside 5 hours, we're going to come and have fun, that's not going to be a priority. If on the front end you said, hold this time on your calendar, this is what our goal for the day is going to be, this is the deliverables that we plan to execute on, most of our working professionals are going to say, oh, I need to be at that meeting. There's huge value in participating. So I think that seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes I think we take that for granted. The earlier you can get on people's calendar and just elevate the importance of them being there, I think the second thing you can do, and again, this is in alignment with that, is make personal calls to each of your board member and tell them how important this is to your organization, to your organization's future, the value you see personally, and them being there. And again, that's just another plug that's going to encourage them to participate. I think board retreats are great opportunities for community building. So building into your schedule some type of either coffee or breakfast or lunch where board members can just form relationships with each other, understand each other's passion for the work even more. You know, in 18 years of leading, one of the most beautiful things I saw was people coming into the board not knowing each other and leaving being lifelong friends. And I saw that in several relationships. They had no connection before coming to this board, but then they shared this passion for this vision and this mission, and they left and are still buddies, you know. So I think and that is that community building. So that needs to be sure to be built in. You know, another thing that we have to do is be sure that all voices are heard. So in our board meetings at the Northside Neighborhood House, we always had board discussion as part of our agenda, and it typically was 20 to 30 minutes of our board meeting, just always being forward thinking. And we used a strategy that I learned in a board source training years ago, which was turn and talk. And so that really empowers our introverts to have their voices heard. So talking through any type of issue and saying, turn and talk to your partner, and then having a time to share out. And what that does is ensures that everyone's voice is heard, our introverts and our extroverts. And then I think designing activities, again, so all voices are heard. We use design thinking in the studio so much, and that's just allowing people to put all of their ideas out there. And that really ensures that everyone, again, has a part of the process and feels engaged in the process. I think another thing that we can do to be sure that there's engagement is have multiple staff members be a part of the process, because I think that just ensures that there are more people in the room and it's not just you trying to ensure that everyone's engaged. You know, you can encourage your staff members to say, oh, if you see someone that doesn't look like they know exactly what to do next, or they're not sharing their voice, can you lean over to them and ask their opinion? Or I think that having multiple people who are looking and paying attention with you to be sure that everyone's engaged and part of the process. And that's another gift of using a facilitator, is that's often something that they are ensuring that happens. So I think all of those are really important elements to keep
Yeah.
people engaged.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I hear you talk through those things, they seem simple, but usually it's the master plan, that agenda, right, that you plan for that board retreat that helps you ensure you get all those things incorporated. You were talking about some of the guiding principles from board source, that turn and talk. I love it. One of the things that has always stuck with me in my facilitation is this 20-60-20 rule, right? So 20% talking. So you don't want to spend the entire board retreat talking. Only about 20% talk to the group. The retreat is for them to talk. That's the 60%, right? Where they're exploring questions, major questions that you might be bringing to the board. You're asking for their perspective. You're asking for them to imagine or vision future opportunities, or to brainstorm new ways to bring in funding, right? Whatever
Right.
it is, that's discussion, right? That's that area where they're contributing. And then the last 20 is like action. What will we do? How will what commitments will we make to go forward? Whether that's personal, asking for personal commitment of board members, as well as for the staff or as a leadership team of the board. So lots of good input there. You know, so often when you're going through this board retreat planning, there's this critical element around the relationship between the board and the staff. It might be in the forefront or it might be hidden in the background, whether it's working well or not. But it is an important aspect of thinking about your board retreat. Talk to us a little bit about your advice there about building and strengthening the relationship between board and staff.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important. And I think I love that even the question is framed as board and staff, because I think a problem that or challenge that several nonprofits have is that they think, and especially when they're smaller organizations with a smaller team, they think that the CEO and the executive director is the only person who needs to have a relationship with the board. And I don't agree with that. I think it's important as a leader to engage people who are strong leaders within your organization to connect with your board. It gives them more connection to the mission. It's a great tool for developing your staff members. So I just wanted to lean into that. I think having that staff and board connection is really important. I think that we have to meet with board members. Again, this goes back to really having intentionality with connecting with them to be sure we know what their skill sets are and so that we can use them when we're setting out these action plans that are designed to execute on strategy. We have to know what our skill sets of our board members are, and you can't do that from a board retreat or from just having them attend board meetings. That takes one-to-one connections with our board members, whether that be grabbing coffee, lunch, whatever that is. That personal time has to be a priority so that you'll know how to connect with them. And then, I think one of the most important things is calling on our boards to serve and to have some speaking into when we're having pain points. We always ensured that we had an HR person on our board. So if there was something that our chief operations officer needed from an HR perspective, she knew who she could call on. I would have my facilities folks. I'd have my folks who just were great at executing on vision, and I would connect with them so that they had, again, ownership in the process. And that wasn't happening. That was happening before retreats and then after as we're executing on our strategy, just being sure that they saw their value and purpose in making sure that we executed on that strategy.
I love how intentional that you are about that, right? So really being clear is your know the strengths of your board members, the expertise that they have, and then making sure that for the staff who may need some of that expertise from time to time, that they're using that in that advisory, the coaching, the mentoring kind of relationship, and that strengthening, it's in the moment value, right? It's like we have this problem. Who's on our board that knows about this that can provide insight? So I love how intentional that you described that. And it sounds like it was just natural. It was just a way of working, and how beautiful that was about how you managed that between the board and the staff.
And sometimes when you're setting out new strategies, that's a time where you identify as a board, as a collective group, wow, if we're going to go in this direction, or if this is something that we need to be really forward thinking about, it's a great time to set out some governance priorities and goals for future execution on strategy, right? And seeing, oh, I know I have this great team that can accomplish XYZ, but if we want to accomplish this next bold goal, we've got to be sure that we have someone with this skill set on our board or on one of our committees. We often and had shifted to and had a conversation with another leader the other day about putting board members or putting members, prospective board members on committees and seeing about their engagement. And that's another thing, just as far as board retreats and strategy. If you have someone, a former board member or someone who's on a committee and really seems to be just a strong advocate for your mission, and you feel like they have some of those skill sets that can continue to move your mission forward, invite them to your retreats. I mean, I think there's a space for that as well, especially if you're doing larger vision and strategy casting for your organization.
Right. One of the things I'd also mention from a resource standpoint that we make available to teams, generally boards and others, that if you have conflict or if you're trying to build new relationships, we have tools like the DISC, which is a personality profile kind of assessment instrument. You can do it online. You can look at the whole profile of the board. Who are the drivers? Who are the analytics? Who are the relationship people? So some of those style differences might be causing conflict. They might be something that we knew that we might approach that board member a little differently if they're very fact-based. Maybe that's how they always want to be approached first in terms of engaging. Certainly those are other tools that I know that we've talked about that could be a resource for those board retreats. Finally, as we kind of get into the end game here, how do you measure success of a board retreat? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think there are some tangible and intangible things, right? I think you you can walk away and see if there's a deeper connection between participants. You see that as people are wrapping up for the day. Are people, leaving as quickly as possible? And that means maybe you haven't had as effective time together. One of the things that I love seeing when I work with clients is we had a group in yesterday and they probably stayed in the space for an additional 25 minutes talking about ideas that had been generated, how to execute. There was just energy in the room. So I think that's something that is an easy win. I mean, and that's probably one of the most important wins is just having that deeper connection to each other and the mission. I think also there are just some easy ways to gauge the knowledge before and after and the depth of knowledge, and also checking in on what those deliverables were that you planned to have. And if they're not there, you might not have been as effective. So always being sure that, yes, at the end part of the process that you have achieved your goals and have
Right.
those deliverables. Yeah.
And I know that one of the things I've seen you do in your retreats is that sometimes you'll use technology like a Menti or a survey so that you give a QR code or whatever, and you're saying, hey, how well did we progress on our goals, or give us some feedback. So I really love the fact that you bring it all the way back home. Did we achieve what we set out to do? So any other comments on board retreats as we finish up today? I know when I share with the group some special announcements we have for nonprofits in the region, but anything else you'd like to share around effective board retreats?
I don't think so, I guess, and I don't see any questions. And I was looking in the chat to see if anyone had questions. I just think there's such value in, even if you're in between strategies, typically we think about board retreats as either just onboarding new board members or if we're really leaning into strategic planning. But I think dedicating a half day to just building community within your board and being sure that we're clear on executing vision and mission is really, and what the board's role in it is really important. So I would just highlight that.
Good, good. So I don't know if you're seeing my grocery list because I'm not very good at this. Are you seeing a slide deck right now?
We weren't seeing it.
Are you seeing it now? No. Okay, well, give me a second. I'll get us there because we have some interesting things we wanted to share with the group as we kind of wrap up today's program. We know from listening to nonprofit leaders all across the United States right now, there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of disruption, and we're trying to think, Rachel and I put our heads together and like, what can we do as Bridge Innovate to really come around our nonprofit community? And one of the things we're excited to announce today is the use of our studio here at Bridge Innovate, complimentary or just for a cleaning fee between now and the end of April. So anytime that if your team needs to come together, it's a space available basis. You can click on this QR code, or you can email us at hello@bridgeinnovate.com. And just inquire about reserving a space. We have rooms that can accommodate our innovation labs, up to 10 people for meetings. Those are absolutely free. We'll do the cleaning behind the scenes for you guys. But the rest of them, the large rooms, the Foresight room that can handle up to 30 people, and the design center that can handle up to 100. We do bring in professional cleaners for that, so we just ask for your help in that. But otherwise, the use of the space is free. The resources, the flip chart papers, the markers, the Post-it notes, whatever you need, it's here, and we're happy to support you as your team is going through exploration, addressing changes that you might be experiencing in the marketplace. So excited about that. The other thing I would just mention is what's coming up next. We've got a number of webinars that are coming up. Dr. Martha Rader will be talking to us coming up April 7th on winning together, investing in team development. Jonna is coming into us from Kenco, the Vice President of L&D from Kenco, talking about the importance of that for business growth. And the two leaders from Chattanooga Tourism coming in, talking about collaborative strategy. And then our very own Carlene coming in, Executive in Residence, talking about driving talent strategy through leadership development. All stories from leaders in the arena, making change happen every day. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank our guests for joining us. You can find out about all these events at bridgeinnovate.com/events. We hope to see you soon. If you need to reach Rachel, please reach out at hello@bridgeinnovate.com or to her directly, and we'll be happy to talk to you about board retreats or anything in the nonprofit sector.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye now.